I watch more of your clips,
Yeah.
because they're pretty long episodes, but
Yeah.
yeah, just kind of running through everything.
Oh, we're good. Well, cool. All right, Mr. Marler.
Hello.
Thank you for coming on. And I know that today was the first day of early voting, and so I know we're kind of cutting it close to the wire, but I wanted to make sure that I did make time to have you on as well. And I appreciate you guys reaching out because we've been super slammed through most of the election cycle in both Panama City and Lynn Haven. But you seen our show, so you kind of know how it works. So I'm going to kind of give you the floor at the beginning to kind of tell me and tell the listeners, why you're running and what inspired you to run and what kind of change that you're trying to push for, and then we can kind of dive into any details that you want to go over. So
You already mentioned I'm Jamie Marler and running for Lynn Haven Commission Seat 4, and I have been in the area for about 12 years in the Bay County area. I've lived in Lynn Haven for the last 9 years, and I grew up in a small town, not unlike Lynn Haven, for 42 years of my life. And I grew up in a family business, and we were taught from a young age to be involved in community, to have a servant's heart, to work hard, those type of things. And we grew that business. In those days, it was a lot easier, I think. But from grassroots effort to a very large business that we eventually sold, and it allowed me the opportunity to go into law enforcement. So I was able to serve my community. And as a law enforcement officer, we are trained in a lot of areas, and one of those is to be effective listeners, because you got to wear a lot of hats in that area. Not only an effective communicator, but an effective listener. So I learned a lot about people's thoughts and strifes within the community. It taught me a lot about making sure that I listen to the people and those type of things. Unfortunately, I was injured in the line of duty, which led me down a different path. When I moved here to Bay County, I went into the public sector and did that for about 10 years, 9 or 10 years, and had a catastrophic back injury. So I'd never thought about getting into local politics until the last probably 5 or 6 years. And when that happened, the silver lining was it left me the opportunity to get into it. So I had the time, and I'm able to devote my full time to the people of Lynn Haven and the city, the business of the city, so to speak. And God spoke to me. I prayed about it, and the answer was, you need to do it. I want to serve the public again. So that's what's led me to run for the commission seat, and I'm happy to be here. I thought I was prepared, but I wasn't necessarily prepared. But I'm learning pretty quickly. I got my feet on the ground, and I have a positive view of the future. But I appreciate you having me here.
Yeah, absolutely. So so you're talking about a little bit of a law enforcement background. Where were you a law enforcement officer at?
I was a city police officer in probably heard it, Zephyr Hills, Florida.
Zephyr Hills?
Yep.
Okay. I used to live in Brandon, so not too
So you
far.
know where Zephyr Hills?
Yeah.
Right up the road. That's my old stomping grounds. I grew up in Dade City.
Okay. Yeah. Small world. Yeah. That's a nice area there too. Zephyr Hills and all in that area. But
Most people know Zephyr Hills by Zephyr Hills bottled water.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So that's where you get the connection. At least they understand that. When I say Dade City, they're like, "Oh yeah, down south, Dade County." I'm like, "No.
Yeah. No.
Dade City."
Yeah. Not Miami-Dade.
No. Obviously a different atmosphere. I have to say, when I moved here, I love Dade City and all, but we were ready for a change. I raised my daughter on my own. from the time she was about 2.5, and she never wanted to leave, and I understood that, right? And where I was at in my career when I got injured in the law enforcement side, uh, we were there, and then she wanted an adventure and to move somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's how we found our way to Panama City and Lynn Haven. So it wouldn't have happened. It's God's plan, and it's the way it worked out, and it worked out
Yeah.
just right. You know, I was able to meet the love of my life, and she's a lifelong Lynn Haven resident.
Hmm.
Her father is Stan Kirkland, who's very well known to most people in the area as the public information officer for Florida Fish and Wildlife for 42 years. And they have a deep invested interest in Lynn Haven. By chance, my daughter and I were riding around one day when we moved up here. I didn't know where I was at, but it was 77. And we were looking around to say where we wanted to be or where we wanted to settle. And when I drove into downtown Lynn Haven, I guess you call it, I went, wow, this is different than everywhere else around here.
Mm.
Immediately knew it. And it has turned out to, uh, to be true. It's I consider Lynn Haven myself the crown jewel of Bay County. It's a very, very beautiful, family oriented, if you will, bedroom town that's not based on tourism, but it's the type of environment where I want my family to be raised, and I would love for my children. And this will get to why I ran. People ask me the why, and that's my son. I now have a 2-year-old son, and I want him to be able to grow up here, raise a family, find a career, and raise his children here, where I don't have to leave and go somewhere else to visit my grandchildren. In the grand scheme of things, and in the past, that's not been a possibility. A lot of people have to leave here to go find a career or find a job, a well-paying job, and that's unfortunate. But we have to keep our eye on the prize. We got to keep Lynn Haven, but we have to be able to move forward and grow responsibly, and that to me is very important.
Yeah. No, definitely 100%. So normally people have like their three main talking points whenever they campaign. And I guess my question to you is like, what are the things that you're wanting to see as far as growth and things that you want to see change that you really feel like this is the main why you're running and the reason why you're part of doing what you're doing?
Yeah, it's for me. My three main points are public safety, growth in housing, and reduction of debt, reducing the debt. That would be my three main points. And public safety for me is that because being former law enforcement, it's important to me. Lynn Haven has a fantastic police department, and among one of the best in Florida. And uh, I think on that topic, the majority of people want a safe, clean city at the end of the day. And everybody can have an opinion about events that happen or about certain individuals or whatever. For me, what's important is that my family's safe and they live in a family-oriented, clean community. And, the other side of it is that Glen Haven is a family town. So we have to be able to keep that uh, aspect of it, but we also we have growth coming one way or the other. I mean, there's 1,000 people a day moving to Florida. Half of those people are probably moving to the Panhandle, and they're going to end up here one way or the other. So we can either resist it, or we can be ahead of it and plan appropriately for that growth. And at the end of the day, it's like debt reduction. You could say, it's third, but above all else, we got to have the debt at a minimum.
Yeah.
When we keep all this in mind with what we're doing, so I kind of incorporate all of it into kind of one grand scheme that it's all important, and it's it has to be addressed. I think we're at a point where, for the right reasons, many of the right reasons, a lot of times that proverbial kicking the can down the road ends up costing us millions of more dollars. And that's kind of where we're at in Lynn Haven. And we got some issues or challenges, if you will, that are going to have to be addressed. And we need to be able to have a commission that's ready for that, that's informed, educated, and ready to make those decisions and bold enough to make them. Because every time we push that down the road and we table everything, it just compounds and compounds. And I see that a lot. And, you know, it's something that I'm not a big fan of.
Yeah. So I guess this is kind of like an unpopular question because it was something that was asked to me when I was dealing with running for office and things. But
Right.
you're in a 3-person race right now.
Yep.
So it's you, Jeff, Judy.
Yep. Jeff Snyder, Judy Tender.
The
Yep.
3 J's.
The 3 J's. Right. Yep.
Jamie, Jeff, and Judy. But you know, one of the things is like, how do you kind of see this playing out right now? Because do you think that like everybody has like they're kind of like on the same playing field? It could go either way for any of you, or do you believe that you're in the lead more? Do you believe that your message is being perceived more throughout the community rather than because it seems like Judy, which Judy is a very, very sweet woman. I have nothing but good things to
She
say about
is.
her. She's great, but she is more on the. I like to say that the pitchfork and fire crowd a little bit.
Right. Right.
She seems like she kind of fits into that group where she really believes that there's a lot of corruption that's going on in Lynn Haven. There's a lot of conflict of interest. She believes that. You know, obviously, I'm not going to go down. I mean, we can, but I mean,
Sure.
we can go into the city manager. We can go into the mayor. We can go into the commission as a whole. And right now, you know, they're kind of like on this board, which is or in this group of people that are sitting there and basically saying that all the commissioners that sit up there right now are all corrupt except for Jamie Warwick. And so you're out there beating the streets, you're knocking on doors, you're talking to people, kissing babies, you know.
That's
And
it.
so, but the thing about it is like, do you think that that message is being well received in the community, or do you think that people are literally trying to do what you're trying to do? Just move forward. Let's quit talking about the past because, you know, investigations are over.
That's right.
Like all of these things are done with, and we keep just beating a horse that's been dead for a long time.
Beating it hard.
Yeah. And so, but I guess so. The question is, though, do you think that the message that you are putting out there in the community is being better received than the negative aspect of, you know, we need to clean up our city because it's just so corrupt? Because I just don't see it that way. And I mean, I get it. I'm a citizen and I have a full-time job just like everybody else. So I don't have time to go home and start getting out my yarn and trying to like have a map laid out and trying to figure out who was part of the deep state, who was, you know, I don't have time to do all that. But do you think that that message is starting to weigh down on the community in like more in their favor?
You know, there's a formula to this, and it was somebody with FEMA, and of course, you know, we can talk about that as well. But Lynn Haven's been through a lot, and not only with Hurricane Michael, but the impending corruption investigation and the whole fallout from that. But they say when a major catastrophe happens like that, there's a timeline to things, and in the beginning of that, you know, the public, they're very together, and they're, you know, let's go. We're going to make this happen. We're going to dig out of this, be bigger and better. And then at some point, the frustration sets in, and people kind of turn, and it's not so happy-go-lucky anymore and all hoorah. And then at some point, that frustration wears away and eventually turns into positivity. And the reason I say that is because the truth is, Lynn Haven has done a great job recovering from Hurricane Michael, and the current administration is a big part of that. When we had that event happen, nobody knew what was going to happen with the corruption after that, and all those things I just talked about did come to fruition, and I thought it was a great thing. It kind of got everybody back to basics. Help your neighbor, love one another, and I think we should be doing that every day of the week. Unfortunately, people have life. Life gets busy. But what happened, what happened, and the overwhelming majority of Lynn Haven they're very happy with the progress that has been made. Lynn Haven has rebuilt and recovered, uh, if not the quickest, very close to that of any city in Bay County. And uh, through all of that, they have reduced the debt by about 55%. We had a massive amount of debt, not even including storm-related damage, when that happened. So, to answer your question directly, people want to move forward. What's happened. We have a segment in Lynn Haven, and we don't have to say them by name, but they have held the city hostage. If you go to any public meeting in public commentary, it's just nothing but negativity and throwing accusations and corruption without any evidence whatsoever. The other side of that is we have commissioners or a commissioner that doesn't speak back on that when they could. And it creates a perception, and you and I know the perception eventually becomes reality.
What do you mean by what do you mean by like he could speak back out on it?
Meaning when you have your report or rebuttal, so to speak, when you do your report, you could touch on the public commentary, and say, especially if it's directed at you, that's, ma'am or sir, that's just from my point of view, that's not true at all. I appreciate you coming up and speaking. And, you know,
You're
uh,
referring to that specific the last meeting where because that's the only instance that I know of that's been like that where and I think like it was there was some sort of picture that was trying to be painted by I can't remember her name, remember which one it was. Um, but there was something that was said, and then it was painting a picture that Jamie had been like ousted by the commission or by
yeah,
the
I think the
mayors.
word was ostracized, or,
Ostracized.
you know, I guess it's the same meaning. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's the same people every time. That's my point.
Yeah, I've talked to every single person that's come on the show from the city of Lynn Haven, whether it's a commissioner or Vicky. I brought up having public commentary on a separate night
Hmm.
because I really thought I feel like we sit there, the city of Lynn Haven, hell, the all local municipals, do it, but like you have people that get up there on public commentary and they give a piece of their mind on something that I get it. It's probably something that you feel for and it's something that you care about. But we heard you the past 17 freaking times. We know how you feel about Ricky Ramey. We know how you feel about the mayor. We know how you feel about the city manager. And they get up there, and because it was live streamed, it's on Facebook, YouTube, and all this. There are other people in the community that are like, oh my God, you know what? I have something to say about that. And they're up there and they're talking about something that happened over a year ago. And there's already a freaking court case that already took place. And it's already been said. And all of this, and you're bringing up stuff that it literally has, well, I'm not going to stop talking until they fire the chief. Get over it. It's not going to happen.
I don't
Like,
understand that. I don't.
But the whole point on all that is that having it on a separate night and then going, public commentary is for people to show up, voice concerns and opinions so something can be done. You know,
Absolutely.
so commissioners go up there, they write down, you know, people sign in now. It's like, I have your name, I have your phone number, and I have your address. So I'm going to be able to get up with you this next week and talk to you about whatever issue that you have going on. It is not, and everybody has a say, and you have the freedom of speech, but you can you're abusing the time that you, by the way, contrary to popular belief, the city didn't even have to do it.
Nope.
Don't even have to do public commentary. So these individuals get up there and they whip this thing to death. And it's just, it gets to a point to, it's like, you're abusing the ability to be able to speak because there's actually people in the community that have real problems. You know, whether it be a water issue, whether it be a storm drainage issue, whether it be, I mean, dude, there's tons. I mean, dude, think about anything. There's a pothole. There's fucking, you know, whatever it may be. But the whole issue, the whole thing about it is that that's what that time is there for. And if people come in and they keep abusing it, it would not, I mean, in order to keep order in your meetings, I mean, I'm surprised they haven't shut down public commentary anyway, because it's like, it's just gotten so absurd to watch. It's gotten better now. It's
Mhm.
starting to slow down. I think people, you know, the same people that talk about the same thing over and over again, they're starting to see that they don't get any views on that stuff, and they're not getting as many clicks and reactions. So I think they just, it's kind of funny. They just posted a Kendall can pull it up if he wants. They just, because I sent it to you, I think. They posted this thing. It wasn't too long ago about how they only had like, it's like, within 28 days we had 46,000 views or something like that. And I was like, I'm like, huh, I wonder what mine are. And I was like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
a lot of that's
And
them
it's-
watching themselves.
yeah, and it's so funny to me because we're like, huh, I wonder what positivity does in the community. Boom. Oh shit, 235,000 views in 7 days. You're like,
Hello. It's wild.
Oh,
I mean,
jeez, man. I wonder
listen,
how it happened, man. How did we get, I don't know. I just don't, maybe it's because I'm like, not gonna sit here and call you a piece of crap.
you tell me if public commentary is very important, and I think you would probably agree with that.
Yeah, no, it is.
It's very fundamental to our rights, right, as Americans. First Amendment right. Speak out. Speak your piece is fine.
Yeah.
The issue I have is there's parameters to that. You can't scream fire in a crowded theater.
Well, yeah, you can, but there's just repercussions to it.
Right.
Yeah.
And the same should happen in that manner. You can't get up there time and time again. You can if you want. It is so
Well, you're not.
unproductive.
So when you say, I get what you say when you can't. When you say you can't do it, you mean you can't get up there and do it and be successful with getting people behind you. Because
you're going to get certain individuals behind you,
Yeah.
and certain individuals are going to believe certain things. And you just talked about it when you put things out there and you do it time and time again, a certain dynamic of individual is going to pick up on that and go, yeah, I'm mad about that too, right?
Yeah.
No matter the facts, it doesn't matter.
What's also about the censorship too? Well, I hate using the word censorship because if you have a Facebook page, you can decide whoever wants to comment on it, and you can decide. You know, it's like you do have the freedom of speech. You can go and you can talk about it wherever you want. You can go on your personal page. You're just not going to do it on our page. The fact that I have a problem with, and similar to these other pages, because there's other ones that are out there.
There are.
But it's funny because it just happened to Josh Street. Josh put out a post the other day, and they put out a thing. They made a post about how he's like crooked and corrupt and all this. And he was like, well, I'm gonna get in there. I'm gonna comment on it. And I'm gonna give the facts. So he got on there. He didn't give any personal like opinion. He didn't attack anybody. He got on there and he tried to post it, and they wouldn't let him do it.
Let me guess.
And they kept denying it. And then they blocked him from the page.
That's
and then
what
he was
they
like,
do.
And then he was like, dude, what the heck? I thought you're talking about me. You're talking about things that you've got it all wrong, first of all, because I'm about to, and then you don't want me to be able to defend myself. And see, dude, there is no room for trash like that in the
No.
community, because it's not doing anything but causing the separation. Miss Moore over there, I will say, like, she believed in me. So, I mean, she donated to my campaign, both her and her husband.
How they feel about
sh-
you now?
I don't know. But I will say, but let me, I'll finish on this with that. Um, like, she spent a lot of time talking to me after times where I wanted to back out of the race and I didn't want to stay in. And she encouraged me a lot. Um, I was spitting out a lot of negativity about the county at the time,
Right.
which some of it was warranted, some of it was a little misconstrued based on my mindset at the time. But with all of that being said, they're individuals just like everybody else. But the issue is the half truths, because negativity, and I'll quote, you know, Mr. Raffield. Every single time I talk to that dude on the phone, he says the same thing. He says, Ron, you're always going to get further with being positive and moving forward than you ever will with being negative.
100%.
And I used to think it was the dumbest thing in the world, because I was like, there's so much bad shit going on. Well, turn on the TV. There's bad stuff going on everywhere. I've been to places in the world that are dark and horrible places, and you would never want to go there, right? And so when I wake up in the morning, I have my cup of coffee and I'm on my front porch and I'm looking out on my neighborhood. I'm like, yeah, life could be a lot worse. Like things could be really, really bad.
So
And
much
we live
worse.
in a great neighborhood. But now that I'm off my little rant about numbers and how, the negativity, the people that focus on negativity, they're not a factor anymore.
No.
They used to be. I think it was back before we got started, because nobody else would bring people on and actually talk to them like a fucking human being. But
Hey, listen, that's a big part of it,
yeah,
right? You got to be able to have a civil conversation, and you have to go into it with a frame of mind that, you haven't prejudged somebody just
Yeah.
based off of it. It's wild. Not one of these people has ever met me, ever spoken to me, and I'm an open book,
Yeah.
right? And I'm an open person in general. Like,
So what's the dirt on you? What are they saying?
oh man,
I'm just curious.
it started right out of the gate. And it's just so wild to me, because it goes along with kind of their theme, which is corruption, corruption, corruption.
Yeah.
Good old boy, good old boy. I got labeled a GOB candidate right out of the gate, and I'm like, what?
What was the reasoning?
My donors, some of my donors, and I won't bring up names, but it's people. Here's the thing, and everybody can have an opinion about it, but
Yeah.
these are the people, because it's the people that are the main staples that make things move and shake, if you will. It doesn't mean it's nefarious, right? They're involved in the city at a certain level, they're successful, and therefore they're bad. I mean, I've had like part of that group where, just because I came from a successful background in a family business, I've heard things like, well, oh, he comes from a multi-million-dollar family, and ew, no, thank you. I'm like, what? Just because my family,
Was successful.
right, and my parents, started that business, I just helped grow it. That doesn't mean I have millions of dollars.
Mhm.
I'm a working man. I'm like everybody else. Literally, I'm not going to say I'm not a politician, because that'd be like, saying you don't play baseball in your
Pitcher
I
for
just
the
like
Braves.
I just like to catch, and hit baseballs. But but I'm a husband and a father, and a person who cares about the city I live in,
Yeah.
and I'm passionate about the city of Lynn Haven, and I want to see the city continue to do the good work it's doing, because that's part of the issue. They come in there throwing all these accusations about mismanagement and corruption, and they never come with any evidence. I've never seen any evidence, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
if there's some sort of corruption going on, I'm sure the state attorney would be, more than willing to take a look and prosecute it if it was happening.
Yeah.
The city of Lynn Haven's been more investigated. It's
Yeah.
almost like with Trump. I mean, when people say that kind of stuff, it's like, dude, the guy's been more, audited and investigated more than anybody. Well, the cities, with everything that they went through, uh, same thing.
Yeah.
And yet here we are. We're still all these years later with all the things that have been done. It does nothing productive for the city. And we need desperately, we have real challenges and issues ahead. And we need desperately to have people that are willing to stand up against that type of nonsense. And I don't mean nonsense by public commentary. I mean nonsense by getting up there. I don't know how anybody could sit there and take being dogged out time after time after time and all these accusations thrown at you. What you end
Yeah.
up with are situations like what happened with Mayor Nelson. And I don't condone that at all.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in decorum in those type of settings, always,
Yeah.
no matter what. But given the circumstances, you can kind of understand why he was doing what he was doing if you understand the dynamics of it. And I'm not going to judge Commissioner Warwick one way or the other, but when you remain silent, and you feed into that in a way when you don't speak out against it as a sitting commissioner, it festers and it continues to grow. And
See,
it will go on forever.
Yeah, more. You're saying like more public. He needs better public response on things like that.
So if you're
mean,
sitting
but
up there,
I guess the only argument that I have on that, because we talked about, or you were talking about Jesse, and we had Jesse on, and I was dreading it. I did not want to have. I was kind of like, I reached out. I wanted him to come on the show. I didn't know how it was going to be, and to be honest with you, it was great.
Yeah.
Like, he is not this guy that because you turn on the TV and it's going to be like this. But now I have called Jesse out on stuff before in the past.
as he should be.
There's
I've called
things that
Jesse out on things.
well, there's things that and that's the other thing, right? Because you could still call people out and be respectful and say, hey, what you said here, this was over the line. This is you kind of cross the line. But people don't do that. They want to hate somebody. Here's the thing: a lot of people out there, they think that they know what hate is.
Right.
They don't know.
Right.
They've never hated anything a day in their life. And
they don't know what true hate is.
But they're going to sit out there and they're going to say hateful things.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you talk to somebody like Jesse and you get his perspective on things. You can agree with it, you can disagree with it, and then you move on. That's part of being an adult. Like,
hey, imagine that. Pretty basic, right?
So, but it's the whole
mutual
thing.
respect.
Yeah. Because there are things that I don't agree with him on. There are probably things that I don't agree with you on, and we're about to find out. But
100%. That's the way it should be, though.
But that doesn't mean that you just close off complete and total communication. But going back to the donors thing, because I was really big on donors for a while, like especially at the county stuff, because when it comes to donors lists, I just had a conversation with somebody literally today right after lunch, and they brought up Chris Forehand in Panhandle Engineering and how he's just crooked and he's just taking money from the people and all this. And I'm like, first of all, he's always awarded those contracts by the commission, whether it's Panama City, whether it's Bay County, whether it's Lynn Haven, right, Callaway, anywhere. And so people are like, he's the only engineering firm. And dude, I feel like my response was the best. I looked at that person. I looked at this person. I said, so go take your lazy keyboard warrior ass, take it to college, get an engineering degree, come back, work for a firm, and bust your ass to be able to have enough money to go start up your own firm, and then go get city contracts just so you'll shut up. Because if you want something changed in that, and you're sitting there saying, well, something needs to be done about it, getting on, Facebook and typing up stuff and doing that, you're not striking change. You're going to have to figure out a way to do it if you want there to be, more involvement from companies that are here. But they're the same people that will sit there and say, well, Chris Forehand donated to Josh Street, Jamie Marler, freaking, he's going to donate because he believes that everybody should have the right to run.
Exactly.
And so that was just an example of somebody that's on a donors list, which I don't think is an evil person. But people will, this is the stuff that goes on in the Twitter sphere and on Facebook. And it's like, dude, why is it bad to have a good, reputable company in a community?
It's not.
Because now it's demonized. Like if you're successful, yeah, it's demonized.
That's a great point, and this is that's just exactly what I'm talking about.
Like literally, they want to say that the
I don't
Republicans,
understand
it's
it.
socialism. It's
I'm like-
literally communism.
I'm like, hold on. I'm like, I want to raise my hand and go, when did
You want people to be, you think that a person that is running for office needs to be dirt poor and never had any run-ins with the law and be squeaky clean up in church, freaking in a choir somewhere
it's
in
crazy.
order to, by the way, go and spend time away from your family to be able to help make decisions that are going to lead our community into the future. And
Serve in the community.
And then these people want to sit. These people, they want to sit there and they want to demonize you for doing it. I mean, it is. It's a because again, you're talking about the aspect of you're saying that you're a dad, you got kids. All the people that serve up there do, and then they come home after somebody gets up there and points a finger in your face, calls you corrupt, and say there's conflicts of interest, and you go home and you sit down on your couch and you just stare at a TV screen and you're like, nothing's ever been given to me. Nothing
Exactly.
has ever. I've had to work for everything that I have. I went and I knocked on all those doors. The city, then that's one of the things that Sam always comes back around to. The city chose me, whether or not those people did or not. The city chose me to be here, and if the city keeps choosing for me to be here, I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
And I think that that's a good way of like looking at it.
Yeah, there's this certain dynamic there where, like you were talking about with Sam, there's this dynamic on the commission now that because, and I will say Commissioner Warwick is probably the strongest voice on the commission right now. Not necessarily, in my opinion, in a positive or good way, or not, but he is. And because he gets voted against in certain situations, it becomes a point of contention with these people that, well, the rest of the commissioners just go along with whatever the mayor and the city manager want. They just walk the line, and that's just not true.
Did he say that?
I've heard it from them, that certain group, that, because they didn't vote with him, somehow they're just going lockstep with what the mayor and the city manager want instead of making their own minds up, which is not true, but it goes to part of what we're talking about. It creates this atmosphere of where people start going, well, are they right? Are they not? We don't need all that. And like you said, when you're talking about their views, they claim that they don't do it for the views. They do it because they care about Lynn Haven and all this stuff needs
That's why
to
they
be
post their views.
right. And all of a sudden it's like, well, look at this. I wanted to literally say, well, look back at when you started posting about me.
Yeah.
All this negative and jumping all over me. And it's right in that time period. You're welcome. Thank you for driving traffic towards my name as well. It's just all silly to me. If there's something there, show it to us.
Yeah.
Right? We had a thorough investigation. In my opinion, and most people's, the right people, were arrested, prosecuted, and either pled out or served time or whatever. But it's just wild, and I cannot stomach the fact that we are being held hostage by that type of stuff. And I have to say that with a caveat that, public commentary is very important, and I think we should do it. But again, you can't yell fire. You can, but you shouldn't yell fire in a crowded theater. It's the same concept. It's something that has to give.
Yeah.
And my whole premise is injecting positivity in the local politics. Let's get down to the business of the city. And you can either, that's the reason we have several people running. You're gonna align with somebody one way or the other, but you're gonna align with them on their vision not just because you think they take a certain side against the current administration or the former administration,
Yeah.
right? And somehow we've gotten there, and it needs to stop. It's not fair for me to be prejudged by people that have never met me, never spoken to me. And if they did, by the way, even for 5 minutes, they wouldn't have that. Well, they probably would, just because they're wrapped up in all that, and I can't explain it. I don't know. You maybe you can explain it to me because I don't get it. I've tried,
Yeah.
and I've
Well,
it's frustrating.
well, let's let them die because
That's
we're
right.
their page will eventually die and fizzle out. In fact, I think I just gave them more views about people that know about their page than what they've done in the past month, just on what I just said. So
Probably.
it's actually kind of funny. Yeah, if you type in the Beacon of Bay County, it comes up with our post talking about them
Does it
instead of
really?
their page. It's really funny.
You know, when you have pages created just to counter that nonsense,
Yeah.
something's wrong.
Well, I like to look at their page now. I mean, they do put some information out there from time to time that actually is factual.
Actually, they
Because
put great information out there,
yeah,
right? The majority of the time.
yeah,
That's my thing, right? It's a community page.
yeah,
It's an echo chamber right now.
yeah,
That's what it
yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah. So
Because
I
what you
mean,
talked about, they don't let you comment. They'll block
yeah, yeah,
everybody.
yeah,
They're trying to paint their narrative, whatever their agenda is. And that's the truth.
yeah,
It is what it is.
yeah,
And hey, do what you want to do.
yeah.
But I'm not
CNN
about
does it.
that.
MSNBC does it.
Right.
Fox News does
It's
it. I
it's
mean,
not it's
it's
same thing
yeah,
on a national level, on a bigger level. And for me, and the reason that we're talking about it is because it's an issue. When you're doing that, it's taken away from the challenges that we have ahead and the business of the city that needs to be done. If you think something's going on, bring the evidence and produce it, and you know what I mean?
let's get on the positive stuff.
Let's do it.
All right, so cool. So I do stuff. I've been doing something with each guest now. I've kind of added it part of my questions.
Ooh, a segment.
Yeah, kind of. So, I'm big on, obviously, we're big on the positivity side, but I believe that you need to be able to list negatives and positive things to even kind of have an idea of where the city even needs to go. So,
Yes.
if you could give me 5 negative things that the city is doing right now that they could do better, and with each negative thing, give me a solution for that negative. And then 5 positive things that you either A, want to push for that's a new idea that's positive, or something that they're doing that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And
Yep.
and it's nothing like putting you on the spot, right?
Ah!
So with positives comes negative, right? And that's fine. We should be that way. If you weren't, something would be wrong, right? That would just mean you're not thinking straight. And the city, and I'll touch on it again, has, in my opinion, and many's opinion, uh, given the circumstances of Hurricane Michael and the impending rebuild, have done a great job thus far with juggling all that. Um, and we're probably going to get really deep with this, but it's there's so many opinions about how they did it, the size of the city hall, right? The fact that there's no library still, and it's hard for me to sit back and judge from somebody on the outside to say uh, you should have done this different, or you should have done that different. My personal opinion on the matter is that they did a great job because when they built City Hall, they built it for the future. And what we talked about before with growth coming and all that stuff, uh, without getting into specific numbers, because you get locked in when you use specific numbers. Uh, yeah, we spent some money on City Hall, but in my opinion, it was well spent. When they built a multi-level building where majority of city staff, right, managers, police department, everything's under one roof, and they equipped it with the availability that we have another major event, some sort of catastrophe, that they are ready when it happens, and they can house all of the city staff there at City Hall and feed them. So, you know, we don't ever want that to happen, but we need to be prepared because the past has shown us it can happen to us, right? And it's usually not if, it's probably when, unfortunately. And it's hurricane rated. You know, we could go on about those certain things. You could argue about the size of it. Everybody's got an opinion about it, but it was built for the growth. We don't have to go back and add on and spend more money and those type of things. So, you know, that's a positive to me. To some, that's a negative. So there we go. Are we going on positive or negatives first? What are we doing? What are we doing? I think I hit on both.
I think you were hitting. I think you were hitting on the negatives first, but
Yep. So,
and you don't have to focus on people's opinion on it.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, the city, for the right reasons, for some of the right reasons, have made some mistakes and now we have a situation where we're going to have to address it. And one of those is, you know, the water treatment facility. We again had Hurricane Michael, then we had COVID, and they felt like they didn't want to burden the taxpayers anymore with having to raise rates or otherwise to address that situation. But what that caused was a situation where now something that cost us, you know, say 30 million is going to cost us 50 plus million because they didn't do it then. And that's kind of where I'm going with everything is we have to have action. We have to be able to make tough decisions that may not be popular, but be able to explain that in a way where people understand it, even if they don't agree with it.
Yeah.
And they may walk away still being, you know, they're going to be upset about it. But that's part of it. That's part of being a commissioner. But that's what they elected you to do, is to make those tough decisions. But you need to be prepared and be educated on it and know what the, you know, the impact's going to be on the community. So the water treatment, that part of it to me is a negative. So we'll go step by step with that. The same goes for stormwater. So we have water treatment facility, which, by the way, they've looked at avenues of how we can solve that, because the issue is we're talking about growth. It's coming. We're going to be at capacity. We have to meet those standards. And so we're going to have to either rebuild it or move it. And the city's in talks with the county right now to relocate that. I'm sure you probably talked about it before with somebody, but which to me is a good thing. That's probably the most fiscal responsible way of handling it, because it was built in a bad place to begin with. You know, by the water, by the bay. It's just not a good place for it to be, and it's been neglected to a certain point because, you know, and I say this a lot: money in, money out. There's only so much money coming in, and there's, you know, and it's going back out the other side. Where you spend that money at is only going to go so far. So you either have to cut amenities, cut staff, cut spending, or you have to collect more revenue. And we have people in the community that are dead set against growth. We don't need that. We don't want that. They want to remain what we are. And I can get that. I understand that. But whether we like it or not, we're going to grow. And we should want to grow. And we can do it responsibly. When you don't address things like the water treatment facility and stormwater, it compounds into a situation where you're not only not prepared, now you're costing the taxpayer more money. Even though you were doing the right thing back then, right? It's going to hurt more now. I don't know, you know, that mentality to me is the right one, because we're all human beings. We don't want to, nobody wants more taxes, right? Do you want some more? I'll give you some more. I don't want any more taxes. But the reality is, we as a community, you know, that money doesn't fall out of the air. It has to come from somewhere. So we have to have people that are ready to make those right decisions, where we don't compound those situations into costing so much more money, because we're still going to have to end up raising it at some point. And now we're at that situation now with stormwater. even though we have that assessment fee, it's barely covering maintaining, staff and just clean up, keeping the ditches clear, those type of things. That doesn't account for any new projects. And we have some that need to be done. Now, another positive, I'm going back and forth with negative and positives, but the city's done a lot of work. We had multiple projects with 17th Street, with the ditch project, and it has alleviated a lot of flooding. And at the end of the day, my point of view is I don't want to see any neighbor's house flood. Now, Lynn Haven, because of its elevation, there's always going to be some water standing here or there. It's just where we live. It's part of, putting up with where you live. We live in paradise, and part of that is, being by the water and at the elevation we are. We're going to have some water in our driveway and some streets, that need to run off. But you don't want it in people's homes. When it's encroaching on people's homes, it's an issue. Even one home, and we're working towards that. But we're going to have to, and the city's looking at right now, adjusting that assessment fee. It will go up. We're trying to make it. The city's trying to make it more proportionate to everyone, meaning impervious surface. So the bigger the house, that type of thing, and the slide scale. So going to a 4 scale type situation where it spreads the cost out more proportionately among everyone, and also by the size of your house. But there's still contention there with properties that don't have any homes built on them, right? Because they're still getting charged an assessment fee. They're still going to have stormwater in that property, but they don't have any impervious surface. So it's, it's a hard thing to kind of work through and do, but it's still being looked at. But we're going to have to do it. And this is another example of what I'm talking about is, yes, you want to be informed, and they went back to the company to have them adjust some things and make sure we get it right. But we got to make a decision at some point and get it going, because it's just going to get worse. And it goes back to being effective, not being afraid to make those decisions. And I know it's not easy. I know it's not. We have the situation with zoning. I didn't even know Lynn Haven didn't have zoning. I always just assumed every city had zoning, right? But the way that Lynn Haven works, it works as long as they meet all the parameters that the city asks for whatever it is, setbacks, entrance, exits, capacity, yada, 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 drainage, retention. But you run into situations like with this new development off Cash Del Mar back across the bridge. And those are really nice homes back there. And if I own one of those homes, this builder has met all the parameters. This is one of the last meetings. And, it was to approve that build. And it got pretty heated because people are passionate about that stuff. And I understand why. But based off of our current rules and ordinances, he met every standard. All of a sudden, it got tied into because it runs in the county, right? That property from the other end, the entrance, because they wouldn't let them go through. They wouldn't let them create an entrance through that neighborhood for emergency vehicles. Then it ran into, well, we don't know when they build that there's going to be enough water pressure to be adequate for fire protection. And that may take away from the other people on that street, right? That leads into there. Well, then it ran into the road, which is county. And then it started blending everything. I'm going, hold on. If by our current standards, they meet every parameter, whether people, and it, like I said, it got heated. We have to say yes, whether we like it or not. And this is a multi-level duplex style, nicer setup, but it's not, you're talking about a really nice neighborhood with bigger homes on the water, and it doesn't fit there at all. And I think most people would agree with that. And I wouldn't want to have to say yes, but we have to. So as commissioners, we have to be able to do that. So now they literally had to have the city attorney kind of jump in and say, well, hold on, because they were like voting it down or whatever. Or, oh, well, I have to say yes. And they're like, well, you can say yes with parameters, meaning if the county approves, right, the road and they agree to all that and they make it, they did traffic, they did everything. They did traffic studies, everything else. Then yes, I'll vote yes on it as long as they meet those parameters. We'll let the county worry about that. I know it gets a little sticky because you're mixing, city and county and all that, but it's just another example of that where a lot of things get tabled like that and they get pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. I don't think it's fair to people in the contractor. And again, I don't like it myself. Does it fit there? But if we made those rules, right, we need to abide by them.
Yeah.
It's his right as a contractor and a builder. And if he meets those parameters, he should be given that opportunity, whether it's popular or not. And that could be controversial with some people, but that's the way it should be. And if we're not okay with that, then we need to institute zoning where we have a more defined thought process on where things are built and what should be where and, and those type of things. So we'll see. But I think if we do that, we should do that when the debt's paid down to a reasonable level. And what does that put me at 3 or 4?
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Touch on one more thing.
All right.
Probably all over the place, but
We'll take a break after the negatives.
yeah, I think I'm mixing both, but we'll go back to the.
Well, no, you were given the solutions to the problems.
Yes.
So,
The commission meetings, we talked about kind of the other side of it, public commentary, and I think you've talked before about the situation with Jesse, where they were claiming that Commissioner Ward was being ostracized or whatever.
well, I mean, there's been several things with Jesse where he's, when I had him on, I talked to him about it where I was like, a lot of people can see the fact that this man is a human being that is irritated because of things that have been said, but you have to look at the backstory of everything that's going on behind why somebody does what they do.
Correct.
So if you are a sitting commissioner or mayor, people can say whatever they want about Doc Rowan, but I've had several people that have come on and they have said some god-awful stuff about the man.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, listen, you can go on your Facebook page, you can go wherever you want, but you're not going to come out in here and you're not going to talk about somebody's family.
Right.
That's where I draw the line with my podcast. You
100%.
You can say it all day long, but it ain't going to make the cut.
Right.
I don't talk about people's family.
Right.
But when you look at the mayor of Lynn Haven and you see these pages that we have brought up and that we have talked about, they sit there and they talk about this man's wife. They talk about his family. You think
his
that
height, his size,
the meeting where he calls out somebody and says, "Hey, you just came up to this stand right here, and you're saying that this does I want to know, does this commissioner feel this way? Because this is what you're saying to me, and I've already talked to him about it, and I didn't think that he felt that way. So can you please, tell everybody?" Now, the way in which he did it, I think it was stupid.
Mm-hmm.
I really do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that everybody does stupid crap.
Yep.
But I understand because the dude, that's the place where it's like, you come up here and you spit your bullshit all the time and you're publicized all over freaking Facebook and YouTube and everything. My turn.
Exactly.
You've been, and I'm not saying what he should have done. He's a grown man. He can do whatever he wants to do. But if it would have been me, yeah, man. So when do I get to look at somebody that comes up here and sits on a fucking podium and sits there, and then you're gonna scrutinize me in front of everybody? Which, by the way, absolutely do it. I'm a politician, and that's my, that's part of the game.
Yep.
That's part of the
You're signing
program.
up for it.
And so, but you brought up my family.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those where a citizen comes up. It's like, oh, shoot, can the mayor look down at somebody and be like, "Hey, you know what? I'm so happy that you brought that up. There's something I need to talk to you about, though. Why are you talking about my kids on your Facebook profile?" It's like,
Hey.
And you know what? I think that would be an amazing thing. Or look into the camera and say, hey, Bernie, I know you're sitting there talking about how I'm an abusive husband or I'm a narcissistic husband towards my wife. Hey, I need you to pick up your fucking phone and talk to me about this because you talked about me and my family.
Yep.
And now I want to beat wholesale ass.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the type of person that that's the reason why I didn't get elected. But there's
Imagine
a
that.
reason. There's a reason why I didn't get elected, and that's one of the reasons why is because I don't have a problem looking at anybody and saying and calling somebody out and be like, "That's great." So see as how we're not talking about city business anymore. Why don't we go and you want to bring up drama? Then cool. Let me go ahead and bring up drama. Seeing as how you want to utilize the taxpayers' dollars to come up here and talk about how I'm treating somebody that's on the commission without any proof, without any evidence. Cool. Let's go ahead. I'll go ahead and order Domino's. I can get them to pop some popcorn, and we could just sit here and we could talk about dumb shit all night.
And that's what you're going to do. And you're going to continue to do it. You're going to continue to do it.
And the thing about it is, if he did go off about it, then that would be the thing. You know, that would be what everybody gets up there and talks about after that.
And that's
So
what
it's-
happened. When
it's a
that
lose-lose.
certain situation happened, right?
Yeah.
I understood why he did it because I know the dynamics of it.
Yeah.
Was it right? No. You have to hold decorum.
Yeah.
And I was in the meeting,
Yeah.
and I'm sitting there going, don't. Because what he did was he ended up, it didn't make it any easier for me because I'm endorsed by the man, right?
Yeah.
And they're looking for every opportunity, which, by the way, and we won't get too off subject, but that's a whole nother thing. When did it become bad to be thought of well enough to be endorsed by our leaders, right?
Your endorsement with Jesse Nelson.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
all I need to know about you. Like, that makes me who I am, just because a man thinks enough of me to endorse me. And that goes back to that whole mentality of the, good old boy
Yeah.
and the deep state and the mafia. It's just wild. And I take those kind of things offensive because, first of all, you, again, have never talked or spoken to me. And also, that's the way it's supposed to be. You want someone who, your leadership believes in enough to endorse them, right? You don't. You may not agree with everything the guy does, but again, you have to take a look at the whole body of work, and it goes back to with Chief Ramey. I don't agree with what he did. I don't agree with how it was handled, but because me being former law enforcement, I made a post about it congratulating the police department because we do have a fantastic police department on their reaccreditation.
Yeah.
Well, they took that and ran with it, and they just keep on hammering on it now. And now I'm, endorsing. Well, he's endorsed by Mayor Nelson, and he endorses Ricky Ramey. And I'm like, when did I say I endorsed Ricky Ramey? Right? I have respect for law
Well,
enforcement.
you can't endorse Ricky Ramey because Ricky Ramey doesn't run for office, so it's not even an endorsement.
Exactly. That's how ridiculous it sounds. But I'm just saying, like, you are putting words in my mouth and painting a picture that is completely untrue from people that have never spoken to me, and there's an issue with that. We've somewhere along the line in politics, it's become so polarized that just because you have a certain donor or some certain person endorses you, that puts you right out of the game. Here's the truth of the matter. What it is for them is they want to keep this thing rolling. And the way they keep this thing rolling is to reelect Jamie Warwick and elect Judy Tender, right? Because they're going to hold them accountable. And I'm like, accountable to what exactly? Transparency. Well, here's some transparency for you. We have committees now that, for financial and everything else. And that's what I consider transparency. You're putting it all out there for people to help you make that decision and involve in the community. I don't know what they consider transparency. What I consider transparency is when somebody comes up there and has an issue with them, that you're able to speak back to them in a factual manner, in a respectful manner, and talk about it and hash through it. So you don't have these kind of situations.
Yeah.
It's just a really weird environment to me that we've gotten to this. because,
Mm.
you know, and I probably shouldn't even go here, but, you know, because we're set up today, certain voters that voted for them, you know, every conversation that was within earshot of me had to do with Ricky Ramey's situation, you know, and how that went down, or uh, the library and where's that money, and one of the other many things that are just all the negative things that hold no stake in anything positive for the city and moving forward. That's my whole thing, moving forward together. You know, what's happened's happened. Whether I have to agree with what happened or not, in my eyes, as a former law enforcement officer, it was investigated again. They were arrested, prosecuted, whatever. We now have a former mayor who continues to create a narrative in you know, inject herself into the city, even though she doesn't even live here, painting a picture that there's still corruption going on and it hasn't been addressed, and that she was completely 100% innocent, right? So apparently, the FDLE, the Bay County Sheriff's Office, the FBI, the state prosecutors, everybody involved conspired against her and railroaded her and falsely prosecuted her, and she's completely innocent. And they did that because why? And everybody conspired against her, and she's the innocent one. Whether the severity of her guilt, right? It is wild to me and speculative to say she's completely 100% innocent. And I'm not judging, by the way, but facts are facts. And that's what we should be going off of, as far as I knew. Somebody tell me different if we're not.
Yeah, yeah. That whole argument just goes stupid sideways.
Well, it
'Cause
plays in all of it. It's
yeah,
all part
well,
of it.
it is, and I guess yeah. I mean, it is impossible to kind of talk about Lynn Haven right now without talking about all that.
It's
And
crazy.
you know, I talk to a lot of people. I talk to a lot of people.
A lot of people.
And it's amazing because there are people that I've had conversations with, especially about all that corruption stuff that went on, how it may have been. I don't know. I mean, I know that my biggest thing with the whole, seeing as how we're talking about it and we're just chit chatting.
Sure.
It's like you go through ethics training a lot when you work for the government, even when you're doing contract work or anything like that. You're
It's important.
consistently going through. I mean, it's yearly stuff, and um, I really it's her story because I got the book. I talked to her. I invited her to come on the show. She was supposed to get back up with me. Probably won't now, but and that's fine. But the thing about it is you know the interviews that have been done, even with Bernie and like all these other things, right? They move emotions around these videos, and they move emotions around a room. Listen, I grew up in church, so I know all about moving emotions around a
Right.
room to be able
Yep.
to be able to get the end product, right?
Yep.
So it's the whole thing about, um, like you said, building that narrative. But the questions that are being asked are hilarious to me because I read when she talks about in the book about how after she finds out that this money was allocated wrong, and then she found like this bag of money and whatever the story is, and I might be butchering the details, but that's the consensus. That's the overall
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, you're on the
And
right
then
direction.
you're the I come from a military background, right?
That's right.
You're in leadership. You're a leader, and you didn't know what to do.
Exactly.
You went to who? Oh, I thought that,
None of it
what,
adds up,
bro.
by the
Like,
way.
do you? And I really, it's hard for me because I have some close friends that are huge supporters of her, and they believe that she was 100% innocent.
There's a
Right?
lot of them.
You know what? She may have been. Maybe there's a possibility. But here's my thing. Um, I really am having to question the intelligence of people that I have surrounded myself with, because it's these things. It's like, this is common sense, and they're looking at me and going, "No, she didn't." And it's like, no, 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 no. This is a
It
common sense.
doesn't make
None of it makes any
sense.
sense. So, and you can sway. Listen, people have, I still talk to Tommy Ham and I still talk to Daniel Raffield. Believe it or not, I still talk to them about issues here
Sure.
and there.
Yeah. Why not?
Both of them have changed my mind on stuff, about how I look at stuff. And guess what? I've changed their mind on some stuff, because we have like this open communication where we talk about things and we have
Isn't that
ideas.
crazy?
And but when it comes to her, if you ask a question, you are now an enemy.
100%.
Because if you ask a real question, like a real one, like, why did you go to a contractor that's done over $100 million in services to the city? Why did you go to him? Did you even have a conversation? Well, he was a good friend of mine. You're the mayor.
That's even worse.
That's even worse.
I mean, it goes back to like
the people that sit there and talk about the deep state. I'm starting to go, do you not realize that you are actually part of this group that
even
everybody
if you
talks
were innocent, you're not doing yourself any favors, and that's okay, right?
Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
You can
but
do what
it's-
you want, but it goes back to like common sense. And I won't go back through the whole thing again, but so here's what you're trying to tell me, right? All of these people, it's so enriched all the way up the ladder that everybody had to go get her. For what reason? Because she was so politically powerful by her own words and invested, backed by other people, that she would have ran against and beat, Neil Dunn or whoever else. It was Neil Dunn and one other person. I'm like, what?
Well, and to sit there and to say,
It was Jay Trumbull. That's what it was.
and listen, I'm not putting down people who run for office at all, and I'm not putting down people that sit
No.
on a commission board. But if you are the mayor of a town of like Lynn Haven or even Panama City, and you sit there and you refer to yourself as a high elected official,
Right.
you have never traveled anywhere. Because the thing about
Makes
it
you
is
think.
that the mayor is not. That's like what. It's like 20 some odd $1,000 a year, and then you're
Barely over that, yeah.
you're working basically part time,
Yeah.
and then you're out in the community. Like high elected officials. When you say high elected officials, they're like bodyguards,
Yeah.
and they have a staff that does all
Absolutely.
of your work for you.
A big staff.
Yeah, exactly. And so like sitting there and
Those
saying, like,
people are connected, right?
yeah, right.
And I mean that in a good way. Yeah, you're not. And I'm not judging, right, Marco? And I'll probably regret this, but here, she and I are friends to this day on Facebook. I don't know if she knows that or not, but that's the way I am. She was the mayor of our town, and I respected her for her position.
Still respect the position, yeah.
Right. But listen, well, I was going to be the whistleblower. Well, all the evidence that was brought forth, you can't be the whistleblower when you're the one that scored the touchdown. To me, it was just trying to save herself. And she spun it as, well, she went to just blow this thing wide open and tell everybody, and then they framed her. And the whole thing doesn't make any sense to me, and it's very unfortunate. To me, it's very unfortunate for everybody involved. It's unfortunate for the city of Lynn Haven. It's very unfortunate that we're still talking about it right now today.
Well, one of the things that you were just saying a second ago is like people like to sit there and be like, "Oh, these people, they're all part of like this good old boy club. They're all part of like this deep state and things like that." And it's so funny because it's like, okay, who is it? And they're like, "Oh, Tommy Ford." It's like, okay, Tommy Ford, and then they start like naming all of these elected official. I'm not going to go through the city of Panama City.
Yeah, yeah.
And you go through all of them, but my whole thing is somebody said something to me recently. And it was a very, very smart comment, and they were 100% correct, because anybody who has ever kind of like worked their way out of Panama City will understand this. The people that pull strings and that work in the shadows that they're talking about are not in the public eye.
Nope.
The people that they keep referring to, those are the last people that the people who actually run things behind the scenes.
You'll never see them until
You'll never
it comes to
know
light.
who they are,
Right.
and there's a reason for that. They're wealthy. And
Very
when I say
wealthy.
wealthy, not they got a couple million. No.
No.
Dude. We have billionaires that live here.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's so that's my whole point on this is like you can't work in the shadows and be in the public eye at the same time, because then that would you would definitely see. So
No.
this whole thing of running everybody through this this gauntlet of like, well, this person knows this person and that person knows this person and that person. And I'm like, all of these people that you are talking about, no offense to them, they're small fish.
Right.
They're not the
And that's not a slight towards them.
no. That's saying
It's
that
rank and file. It's
Yeah.
it's what you are. I mean,
yeah.
it's not more than that. And man, was kind of impressive. I'm like, really? I'm part of the deep. Like, I feel like
Yeah,
like Alan
yeah.
Branch was talking about. Like, man, that sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, I kind of want to. Do they have T-shirts?
Yeah.
Like,
So and it gets trolled and everything else. But and it is funny. But at the same time, man, it's tragic that we're.
I had a guy that pulled a joke on me when I was running for office. I went to the golf course and he followed politics. I didn't know this guy at all. Showed up at the golf course. I'm getting ready to do my tee time with another buddy of mine. And so I'm in there and I'm like getting my cart and pan and everything. And he looks at me. He goes, I know you. You're Ron Keel. And I said, yeah. He goes, he says, don't worry about it. It's on the house today. And I was like, oh yeah, no. I'm not. He says, and he goes, just kidding.
Yeah.
Man, you're nobody. That's what he said to me. He goes, man, he's like, you're a nobody. I'm not going to do that. I was just kidding with you. And I was like, but there for a second, I was really like thinking, I was like, oh, and that proved it right there. They're like, dude, we're not worried about county commissioners.
I mean, listen, we spent some time on this, but it's important. And I'll tell you why it's important. Because it's a big part of, of again, what I'm kind of running on is we've got to get away from this.
Yeah.
And they have a real issue with that, because they're like, well, you just want to brush
You're
it
just
under
brushing
the
it
rug.
under the rug. You don't want anybody
No,
to
I'm
know about
not.
the corruption.
And I'm like, it was already addressed. And if they're, because they keep bringing up mismanagement and corruption, and they're padding their pockets. And I'm like, from where and what do you can't just keep saying things like this without some sort of backing and direction or proof.
It's speculation.
It's all speculation.
Yeah.
And it turns into, it's like, I want to think of the right word, but the only word I can think of is cancer. It's like cancer.
Yeah,
to,
it spreads like that too, because then it'll get around to somebody today, and then they're going to start spitting out that same information because they're going to go to a church prayer group this evening, and they're going to be talking about it, and they're going to bring it up, and then there's going to be another person there that doesn't do their research, and they don't even know anything that's going on, and then they believe that person, and that person goes and says it to somebody else who doesn't do their research, and next thing you know, everybody's running around the town. Everybody's running around the town going, Jamie Marler sells crack. Yeah. And it's like,
hey,
what?
And the common denominator I see with all of them, and again, this is not a judgment, it's just an observation, is they're all like, they seem like they're miserable. They're just angry and miserable.
It does
and
have to suck to wake up every single day and only
And I'm
see
like,
the
who
negative.
wants to live like that? Because, I did an interview the other day, and I'm like, here's the thing. Yes, we have some bad things happen in Lynn Haven, and it gets talked about to this day. We talked about some of the same things, but I'm like, my whole point is there's so many more positives about Lynn Haven than any of that. And all, if there's something there, fine. I want to see it. I'm very interested in seeing it. But I'm a common sense and logic guy, right? That uses factual information to make an informed decision. It's not any more complicated than that. And I believe in taking action. And when you do that kind of stuff without the proof, it does zero positive for us as a community or for the city and the business and the challenges that we have. That's my whole point about it. And it just creates this atmosphere of you know, if we keep going down this direction, we'll be doing this 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Guarantee it.
I don't even like doing it for the past 30 minutes.
No, I mean, it's dreadful. It's
Yeah,
dragging. And I don't want to take away from anybody's point of view
Yeah.
and their feelings because they're all important.
Yeah.
But man, we've got to take a reality check and say, is it just now that we've created teams? It's this way all the way up the line to national, you know, politics. And this started some time back, you know,
Yeah.
when Trump ran the first time. And man, it's almost like, you know, the two sides just kept going further and further apart. So the left went, you know, way this way. Well, the pendulum swings way that way. It comes way back the other way. And it creates this dynamic where, you know, it's almost like we've gotten away from the truth of what's important to us as a society and the work that needs to be done. Because that's what's important to us. I don't care what city you live in, you know, our county, our state. When you do that, it's a distraction, and it serves us no real purpose.
I think somebody said it recently to me that we like to judge everyone on their worst example, and then we judge ourselves on our best intentions.
Yes. So
It's
good example, right?
actually, I gotta go to the bathroom real quick.
I do too. So we can
Oh,
cut,
yeah.
and then we'll just.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll finish up.
5 positives that the city is moving towards right now, that you know that you support, and you're like, hey, they're doing a good job with this, and it could be things that really people aren't talking about, and then you know we'll focus on that first.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah. So, you know, when it comes to the positive things that current administration has done, or is doing, or have done, it'll be a little bit of both. But I talked about reduction of debt, and that speaks a lot to me, and it goes against some of the narrative you're hearing because, you know, again, I'm a numbers guy as far as facts, and you know, we had a massive amount of debt after the hurricane. I'm not including storm-related debt. So we were like almost $64 million in debt with storm-related. Almost $32 million of that was storm-related debt.
yeah,
Well, they've paid that down, like I said, about 55%, with the fact of going through a rebuild of the city. And there's something to be said for that. I wouldn't call that mismanagement. You know, I would call that management. I would call that good management. I would call that fiscally responsible. And a lot of that debt, or part of that debt, was you know, paying off the 17th Street project bond to James Finch,
yeah.
which somehow he ended up without any other bid whatsoever. And I don't know the details, but he was given the contract, and he provided the loan to be paid back by surtax money. Somehow that bond went from.
Well, he didn't really make that choice. That was the choice that was made by the city.
Correct.
Yeah, but
But it went from a 15 to a 30-year loan.
yeah,
And they saved a ton of money in interest by paying that debt
yeah.
off. A lot.
We did the math on how many millions it was.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's quite a bit.
And, you know,
Which is a good thing. And I'm sure he was happy to get paid back quicker.
well, if you look at, I'm sure, but, you know, I guess there's.
However, he came out guns a-blazing after that about everything else as far as the audit and things like that go. I don't understand how you would want to call an audit on a city that paid you back early.
Well, exactly.
That's kind of weird.
And
but-
not only that, for him to suggest that it was irresponsible and it was mismanaged of it because they could have invested that money. Well, they can't invest that money legally in what he was saying, the way he was saying it. So it was a little, you know, out of touch in my opinion. But to further with that, he, you know, there's a lawsuit going on between he and the city, and that goes back to not this, but the bond or the work that he did on that, but it was all the other debt that
Well,
was.
this is what's interesting about what you're talking about is the fact that, again, so I've said this a couple times. By the way, I've sat down with James Finch.
Right.
Nice guy.
Yeah, he is. I like him.
He was very, very respectful to me. And
he's done a lot of great
and
things.
he
for
has
the
done a
city
lot of
Lynn
great
Haven,
things.
and he's benefited greatly from the city of Lynn Haven.
Yep. But so the other thing about it though is there's some false information that runs around out there, like on Facebook. It's like, oh, he donates the fireworks every year to the city
Right.
of Lynn Haven. And I was like, I did the math, and it was like, it was actually only like maybe once or twice he did that,
Right.
and I was like close to, I don't remember.
It's
I can't
a
remember, but
substantial amount.
it
but
was a
it's not the-
substantial amount. It was a percentage of the money that he had already made off the taxpayer.
Right.
Right. So
It's not cheap to
like,
do those.
So it's like, okay, this guy, he does work for the city because he cares about the city, but he's profiting off the city. Then he donated money that he profited off of the city back into the city for fireworks once. And then after that, they pay off their loan to him. He wants an audit, and then he sues the city so he can take taxpayers' dollars.
Right. So
it's like, this doesn't, it's like, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this and I'm like, dude, I don't get what is going on here. Like, how is
it all ties together.
it's
and
either you're a saint or you're a saint. It's not, it just doesn't make any
well,
sense.
to me, it all ties together because and this election will tell a lot about where we're at as a city because with the particular candidates we have running, you have supporters of the side we're talking about and
Yeah.
the other side, the positive side. And it'll be very telling if we're going to be mired in this forever. But to go back to the point of where we were at, the whole point of the lawsuit is there was about $25 million worth of debt added to the city.
Yeah. It's a lot.
At basically Margot's exit before her, when she exited from when Mayor Kelly had left, like $25 million. That's a lot of money for a city the size of Lynn Haven. Listen, we paved a whole lot of roads. We did. But it's still debt's debt. You know what I mean? Is that responsible? Yeah, we gotta fix roads. We gotta maintain them. We gotta keep them up. It added a lot of debt to it. But the issue with that is one has nothing to do with the other, and it's being confused and mixed together. They implemented part of their procedure. Apparently, he was doing a lot of subcontracting, right, on that paving work.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it became an issue. It became a big issue with quality.
Yeah.
With being able to track it and maintain and make sure that work was being done properly. And
I got dude back there in Pine Forest. Golly, I feel like I'm whipping a horse to death. But back there in Pine Forest area.
Yeah.
I want to say his name, but I need to talk to him first. But
right.
There's a guy who lives back there, and I actually know him pretty well. I remember I was walking door to door with Sam Peebles back when Sam was running. This was before I even thought that I wanted to get into politics. And so we had come up on these people's doorstep, and dude, there was water. Like, I'm talking on their front doorstep, like their lip to go into their living room area from like their hallway area, like was right. The water was almost in their living room.
It's where you're talking about. You see how the road's built?
Yeah. So he had this owner of the house had a pump on his front doorstep, and he was pumping water.
Dude, it's almost like the house
out
watershed
out into the. He was pumping this water out in the road, and then this hose was going down the road. It was just draining off into other people's yards.
Wild.
And so I was like, and he's just sitting there, and man, dude, this guy dog cussed freaking James up and down. He was like, "Hey, dude," and I'm like,
well, I mean, listen.
And by the way, I had just moved back Like, so I had just recently come out of the Army.
Right.
So, like, I don't really know. I mean, I don't really know who anybody is in Lynn Haven. So,
Right.
like, when you talked about Mr. Finch, I was
Yeah,
sitting
yeah,
there
yeah.
going, like, I
Trying
don't
to
know.
figure it all out, right?
I don't know who that is. Like, and they're just sitting there, like, "Deep." So, yeah, when he was talking about the paving of the road in front of his home, he just paved on top of the road and it brought it up like an extra. So, like, all this water hits the road and then it
And I'm
drains
sure it
off.
wasn't originally
I'm sure,
built
you know what I think happened
properly,
on
but
that, and I could be 100% wrong because I have no idea.
right.
But I do know a little something about contracting and like how these contracts work. So, because I worked in construction for a little while, mainly on management sides. So I managed rental equipment at one point in time, but then I also managed a labor hall. So we had um, guys that I would send out to, work sites, like,
Right. Yeah.
temp workers.
Yep.
And so I've talked to a lot of contractors, but I also have done the research to figure out like what projects are going to be open and available, to know who I'm talking to and then how big those projects are, how much money it's going to cost. So, like, what might have happened there in Mr. Finch's defense, what may have happened there was is he wanted to do it the right way, but there just wasn't enough money there to do
Right.
it the right way.
Right.
Because if you're going to do it the right way, you would want to tear up the old road that was there, and then you would want to repave and all that. And it's like they didn't have that kind of money. So he might be 100% like, I want to do a better job, but there just wasn't enough money there.
Yeah.
But all I know is that it made the situation, the road, yeah, it got paved, but it created a new problem. But I
Yeah.
think you see that pretty much in every type of industry where it's like you try to fix something and then you make a problem somewhere
Yeah,
else.
you got to re-engineer it.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's that risk assessment stuff.
It's
you
a
know?
whole putting the Band-Aid on, something instead of fixing it. But, they were trying to put checks and balances in place, and it was the right thing to do, because it can create a really big issue with quality control and keeping the parameters in place when you have people with their own equipment. As a contractor, you get a certain standard. In other words, they've got the equipment, they're overseeing it and making sure that it's proper. Not, hey, I'm taking the bid, I'm going to hire it out and let them do it, and whatever they do on their side, again, no judgment, but if you're not managing it properly, you end up with a situation where you have issues later on. And from what my understanding is, that's what happened. Well, the wording in the contract gave them, again, from my understanding, the right to exit that contract without cause. And therefore, the lawsuit will dissolve at some point, if that's the case, if that's the fact. And from everything I know, that is. But I don't think a lot of people understand, and I was guilty of it, the way that not just cities, but counties, state, all the way up operate. I think people have
People do not understand it.
this thought of just that money falls out of the sky. When I talk about the money in, money out part, the city is a not for profit, so to speak, meaning balanced budget. That's the priority at the end of the year, to keep everything at a status quo and to grow and make sure you're ready. And all of that is done, uh, you know, with bonds. I mean, it's operating any capital project, even general fund, day-to-day operations. They can't just wait on the money to show up, and then it has to be available.
Yeah, but when you talk about bonds, I think that was one of the worst things that Lynn Haven did.
Yeah,
When they bonded everything out, man. That
yeah.
was just
That's kind of where I was going with it, but it's just it. You cannot rely on money that's coming. There should have been more thought process into, like when they took out those bonds for all the paving. Yeah, it needs to happen, but you need to garner that money together, collect it, and then do the project. That's the right way of thinking.
Yeah.
Right. the responsible way of thinking. I don't know why they made that decision, especially in that certain circumstance. I'm sure roads need to be paved.
Well,
but
it wasn't something that was done under the current commission either.
no, and that's a good point. And that's kind of
So,
where I
I
was
mean,
going with it because, and again, I'm
I mean,
big,
if you're going to put blame where blame is due, I mean, look at who the city manager was at the time.
right.
And you look at like all of the ethics that were going on at that time.
Yeah.
Don't tell me that they didn't like.
It just didn't add
If,
up.
if people want to call out corruption,
Right.
why don't you call out that one?
That's my point.
Yeah.
Is like, listen, these are the things that were going on before the current administration, if you will. And they speak more to that type of mismanagement and corruption that they keep screaming about. The type of things they're doing now, to me, and probably to you and most people, speaks to doing it the right way and digging out of that debt and trying to maintain and get to a point where it's manageable and start making the right decisions and actions to move forward.
Yeah, fiscal responsibility. Whenever people talk about the fiscal responsibility, when it talks about debt, when it talks about accepting grants, accepting bonds, and then of course, going through with these projects, people want to talk about. I mean, dude, like I said, I talk to a lot of people. A lot of people come on the show, and they all give me their
you
own
get a lot of
opinion.
information.
And then I sit here, and then afterwards, I'll go back, and as I'm editing, I'll hear stuff
Sure.
that's said, and then I'm like, I'm going to go back and I'm going to look that up, just because, I'm bored. And then
Well,
I'll
it's
go
fact checking too.
Yeah, and then I just go back. Well, and again, you can come on here right now, and you could say that the best candidate ever is going to be a giraffe for the mayor of Lynn Haven, and I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything to you about it. I'm going to let you say whatever you want. If you spill false, because that's one of the things we're getting hit on right now. A lot of people are like, "Oh, it's false information. This person said this. This person said that." And you didn't call them out on it. And it's like it's not my fucking job to be an encyclopedia to follow people around and say when people are. It's what you want to say.
It's a conversation.
Getting back on topic about what we were
Right.
talking about, though, the fiscal responsibility. Nobody even knows what the hell that looks like, because if you did, we wouldn't have a lot of the issues that we have. But that fiscal responsibility is kind of coming down to what you're saying right now, which is, hey, we figure out these projects after certain things have taken place, rather than putting the buggy in front of the horse.
Well, we paved a lot of roads.
Yeah.
I'll keep saying that. We did.
Yeah.
But does that accomplish anything?
Do you think that it was a positive thing, though, that the city did?
It was debt.
Yeah.
Where debt wasn't needed.
Yeah.
At a time, especially when we had the circumstances we had. But speaking to that fact, and we'll go back to what we're talking about, because it just came to mind when you're talking about Chris Forehand, right? In that whole situation, he's worked very hard to get where he's at.
Mhm.
Okay, there's no denying that, and he's a great asset to the city of Lynn Haven. And I say that because the city of Lynn Haven didn't even know what grants were, from my understanding, before he introduced it. And he's a big proponent of that. And he chases that stuff and he engineers it. He's all embedded in part of all that kind of stuff. And it's almost like he, from my understanding, was like, because he's so embedded in it and deals with it, which is a very good positive for the city. Any grant whatsoever that we can get is a benefit to us because it relieves burden off the taxpayer. And he kind of got trapped into kind of, guilty by association because of his dealings and his business model.
I could see how it would be a conflict, because what I would say to that, if I was going to play devil's advocate, is obviously, if I owned an engineering firm that did a business with the city of Lynn Haven, the city of Panama City, I'd be chasing after those grants too and try to give them as much ideas as they possibly could, because guess what? My company's going to end up getting the bid that's going to get the work.
But see, that's the tisk for task. That's the give and take.
Yeah, no. I understand that. Because it's a business aspect of looking at something, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. The part that I have the issue with is that I feel like Chris needs a little bit more competition to go up.
Let's give him some.
That's what I said.
mean, give him
And
some.
my whole thing is, well, why don't you cut some of the red tape so engineering firms come in here and be able to go up
100%.
against.
Or if that's an issue for you, create one. Hey, find one. That's fine. But
I met Chris. Just saying something about Chris's character. First of all, Chris doesn't know me. I don't know Chris. We've never really. We've had one interaction. He had no idea who I was.
Right.
And I actually didn't know who he was until afterwards.
Right.
And it was down at Panama City Hall. That was when they were doing the Path project,
Yep.
and they were getting these votes on which model that they were going to use. And so I looked at all of the models, and I came up to, and I did, like I said, I didn't know who Chris Forham was. I didn't even know what he looked like, but apparently that's who I was talking with. But he sat there, he took out all this time, and again, I'm not a person of influence in the community, or at least I wasn't then. I'm not a person that was. I'm not anybody. I'm just a regular citizen that walked in, and I was like, I want to know what's going on. I'm running for county. I want to know what this thing is that's going on Beach Drive, because I'm trying to learn just politics and educate myself on what these different entities do, whether it's
Yeah, I did a lot of that too. Yeah.
yeah. And so I was just there, and that dude spent 15 minutes. I mean, 15 minutes is a long time, by the way.
It
He
is a
spent
long time.
15 minutes. He walked with me to each model, and he was talking about what was different about them.
Mhm.
I didn't know who I was.
Right.
And because, again, I'm not really anybody. He treated me, though, with respect as
Yep.
being a citizen that's like concerned about something that's going on. He didn't know that I didn't even live in Panama City. It was just the fact that he was like, somebody's interested in this. I want to explain it. I'm going to tell you what it's going to do. And I'm going to say, like, this whole thing of demonizing people that are like, they're successful in the community and stuff like that. That dude, he struck me as the type of person that would take the shirt off his back and hand it to you if
Yeah.
you needed one.
Yeah.
And so for people to go out there and attack him because he's the only damn, engineering firm that's able to do the freaking work. Again, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. Then go to engineering school, come back, start up your own firm, and then give him some freaking competition.
Absolutely.
But until you're able to do that,
well,
shut up, because you have no
Exactly.
evidence.
and it begs the question, right? To that point. So if by association he's the deep state and evil guy, right? while at the same time James Finch is their angel, right? How does that? I can't work that out in my head. He's got the same relationships with the city.
James is different because he does everything out of the kindness of his heart. He's not trying to make any money on anything.
They're all in business to make money. He doesn't do that.
I'm being facetious. I'm being
But
a
I understand
sarcastic
that,
prick.
and I'm playing off of it. But that's not, and I'm not, again, not judging him, because it's a smart businessman. It's a partnership and relationship. And by the way, cities utilize private-public partnerships a lot, and it makes sense in a whole lot of areas, because
So what are some private partnerships that they're using currently?
as far as the city of Lynn Haven,
Yeah.
we have a couple of different issues in Lynn Haven. We're landlocked for one, but one of the things that I'm looking to drive forward is with responsible growth. Is, we have the new development, Marina Island. I don't know how much you know about it. We've got the overlay district.
Nobody's
kinda
really
worked
been
out.
talking about that. When Sam came on, he talked about it a little bit. I kind of, now that I'm looking, I wish I would have expanded a little bit more on that.
Yeah.
But
It's a game changer. And the only reason I say that is it's going to take some finesse and balance, because I don't believe that new development should pay for new development, right?
yeah,
And when you put the load of the work on a developer, first of all, the city doesn't have the money to fund something like that. But what I look at it is tax revenue, right? And any time that you expand revenue, you're taking the burden off the rest of the people. In other words, taxes are going to go up, and they're going to continue to go up. And if we don't, eliminate or try to relieve that issue somewhat with responsible growth, at some point, man, we're getting overtaxed as it is. I'm a conservative at heart, right?
we're taxed on everything.
We're so,
There's a tax
it's
for
like
everything.
tiring. But I don't know, there's not a whole lot of other solutions other than being very lean on budget and being responsible with how you grow to try to alleviate that. So I understand people that say, man, we don't need that here, but it ties into kind of like we're a bedroom community, we're a family community.
Yeah.
In a project like that, it's a livable community,
Yeah.
right? So you have a marina, you have restaurants, you have homes, different multi-level, single family, so on and so on. And you have to be very careful because it can get very complicated because you have existing land there that borders other things. And remember, go back, we don't have zoning.
Zoning. Yeah.
So we have long-lasting industrial places there. And as a city and as a community, we need to make sure that we take care of our own first. You don't want to have people come in and build a massive project like that all of a sudden, you have people say, "Oh, well, they lived there 3 years. I can't take the noise or the trucks or the traffic or whatever from what they're doing." Right? Well, they've been there forever. And to go back what I was talking about before, new development's fine if it's done responsibly, but new development should pay for new development, right?
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't fall on the back of the taxpayers.
Well,
Right?
and that's when they start coming in with the impact fee,
If it's going to lead to stuff where
reducing. Yeah.
it just is going to create an issue like that, then it's a whole nother story. But if
Yeah.
it's done properly and you put the parameters in place, and I understand they're being very careful about it, with how they go about setting up those borders and the where you don't have that interaction. And there's ways to do that, and but it would basically put Lynn Haven on the map as a destination place. And we have a CRA. It's more focused on downtown Florida Avenue in that area, but any city wants to have there's a formula for it, and you want to create that perfect triangle where you create that traffic back and forth through the city for entertainment or activities, right? So you want to have plenty of green spaces. You want to have access to travel, sidewalks, that type of thing. And I think like rails to trails was a great idea, and I think they're going to expand on that with the county and tie in some other things there where it's extended out. Uh, and the issue with like that type of development is going to be traffic, and that's those roads back there weren't built. And if you're familiar with the old fuel depot where they're talking about putting that land back there,
Yeah.
It's not ideal for a main thoroughfare, and the amount of traffic it's going to create has a lot of people, hesitant to even consider it.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of hurdles to jump, but it's just part of that initiative to, uh, in my mind, to alleviate some of that burden off people. If you can create revenue, right,
Yeah.
and spread that out over an area, we'll just go into another positive with, which plays off the negative with the water treatment plant, was that partnership with the county.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to pursue that with everything we have because it's the only sensible thing where we're going to have to either rebuild that facility, which is going to be a $50+ million hit, or we're going to partner with and move that away from the shoreline and out there where it should have never been built, but back then it was a little different, and we can utilize that property where again more tax revenue, maybe like an amphitheater or something out there to create entertainment and tie that in with the other parks. And that will also bring us, I think it's like 5,000 plus, new accounts. So from that area. So that's another, to me, a positive that we're looking at doing that because it's going to save us a lot of money over time. And it's going to alleviate an issue because we're almost at capacity. We're getting closer because, again, growth.
Yeah.
That's whether we like it or not, it's coming. So it has to be done. But yeah.
Nice. Was there anything else you want to hit on?
For me, it's important to talk about the public safety aspect of it. One of the challenges we have in Lynn Haven is, and I'll just touch on it because, again, former law enforcement is our police officers are underpaid. And it creates, from what I know, and this has gone on for a long time, even where I worked, for many, especially smaller departments, is you have new recruits come in, they do their training, and they get themselves certified, and they leave. They go to a bigger department so they can actually make good money or better money. And that's not something you want. You know, the police department is part of the identity of Lynn Haven, and you've seen cities that have literally dissolved their police department into the county, you know, which creates a situation where, in my opinion, you'll have one or two county officers around in Lynn Haven if that were to ever happen. But to me, given the job that our police department does, and they're such a part of our identity as Lynn Haven. It's something else that we have to look at, but it ties right back into, you know, what we have for money, and where does it come from, and it's something that I want to look at aggressively if I'm elected to make sure that they're taken care of, because it's important. When you're not paid a livable wage, it causes a lot of issues. You're not going to have you're going to have turnover. You're going to have you're going to have situations where people are forced to go work somewhere else when they may not want to. And we have a lot of people that have been here for a lot of years, and they're invested in Lynn Haven, and they want to be there. So, and it's not just police department. Obviously, you know, the city manager pay was a big issue not too long ago. Uh, I'll give you my opinion on it. I think she's paid comparably to other surrounding cities, and she's a contract employee, and she was eligible for that. Whether they could have given her more, and they settled on, and she was fine with it. Where they did, so there was a compromise there, but people still just don't want to hear it. You know, I heard it today. I was part of where I was hearing from earshot, and with that being said, if we're going to pay her comparable, we need to pay our officers and first responders comparable. Part of that ties into not only police but the fire department. I won't talk about their pay, but when we talk about making decisions and planning ahead and making sure we're not tabling things all the time, it takes 3 to 4 years to procure. Like, say they need, you know, we're in need of equipment like a fire truck. So even when you procreate that money and it's approved and you find it and you say, okay, go ahead and do it, you're still got a lead time of all those years. And when they're piecemealing things together, right, and they don't have the equipment, it's important to me that we focus on making sure our first responders are equipped and have the best equipment to keep Lynn Haven the safe city that it is. So that's part of my platform. I think it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Do we have a high turnover rate with the police department? I don't think we do.
We
do
don't, but
What?
it creates a atmosphere where at some point, and it's becoming that way. Not to speak specifically, but where it'll start happening. It's just a matter of time. So again, remember when I talked about being ahead of things.
What is the current salary of a police officer that starts in Lynn Haven now?
Well, I don't know the exact number, but it's not far above minimum wage. Let's put it that way.
Really?
You're talking about people that put their lives on the line.
Oh yeah. Hey,
I mean, you know,
Yeah,
you've been
like-
there, right? I mean, it's tough, man. And I have, you know, just because I'm former law enforcement, even if that weren't the case, I have respect for everybody that serves in that capacity as a first responder or military or otherwise. You know, those are the people that need to be highlighted and congratulated. Uh, you know, to speak a little bit about me, I'm the kind of person, if I see someone, uh, you know, of the older generation that has served, I make sure they know it and it's appreciated. And you don't see that as much anymore as you used to. Somewhere along the line, we've lost some of that in our society. And it speaks to part of that positivity that I'm talking about. If you put yourself out there in a way where, first of all, you have to be sincere, right? and you have to be believable. If people understand that you hear them and you're listening, and not just that you're listening, that you're doing what you can do to help them, even if it's not that you can or you can't do all of it, you're doing the best you can do to alleviate, that which they are worried about, or that they have an issue with. That goes a long way. And I'm not saying they don't do that, but as a whole, when you have all that negativity we talked about, remember I talking about tying everything back together, and you take that and you compound it with not communicating effectively and listening effectively, and tabling things. And there's several things that have been brought up that got tabled that have yet to be brought back up, and that's what that creates. So if you keep a frame of mind all the time of positivity, letting the people speak their mind, speak to it if it's something specific to you, and I mean that as a sitting commissioner, and I mean that's important, that if it involves you specifically, that you, in a respectful manner, rebut it and set the record straight. It puts us on a path to where these type of things don't fester and build like they are, and we have to come up with a way to dig out of this, because at the end of the day, they don't all even live in Lynn Haven, but that's not the point. A lot of them do, and even though we don't agree, they're all part of our community, right? And as a community, we're meant to love one another and help one another, and it's just kind of my point of view on the whole of everything.
Yeah. Well, appreciate you coming on. I'll let you have your closing statement and say whatever you want.
Well, I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah.
It's important. And, I would just like to say that, I'm a regular dude, just like you said. I don't say I'm a nobody, but I'm a husband and a dad,
Yeah.
and a person that loves the city of Lynn Haven. And I think it's very important that, that we put the past in the past. It's done, and it's something the city needs desperately, and that we move forward together in a positive manner, and that we are ready for the future growth that's coming. As a city, we always need to be mindful that we don't compete with the private sector. We need, as a city, rather need to be ready with our water, or roads, our police and fire protection, those type of things. And if we always keep that in mind, and we, again, have a commission that's bold enough to be prepared, do the work, and get up there and communicate effectively, and not be afraid to make the decision, whatever it is, it will only benefit the city. It won't be a negative. So I think that's what I bring to the table, and that's what we need as a city. Is we need that positivity, and I'm looking to bring it to Lynn Haven and work hard for them. I think it's important to mention also, through my unfortunate injury and circumstance, the silver lining was I have the time, to give to the people of Lynn Haven and concentrate on the important work that needs to be done in Lynn Haven.
All right, Jamie. Well, I appreciate it. And I know that early voting is going on right now. And then game day's on the 22nd.
Yep. So all this week, 14th through the 18th, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. The senior center is our precinct there in Lynn Haven. And also, cliff note, you can, with early voting, even if you don't vote in Lynn Haven, or if you're voting in Panama City, you can vote there in Lynn Haven if you happen to be there and it's convenient.
Wow.
You can vote for Panama City candidates as well.
Wow.
I didn't know that either. I learned that today.
That's
So
cool.
And then,
So the polls get too crowded over in Panama City, you can just head over to Lynn
yeah, or
Haven and vote.
if you're, you know, a lot of people
Yeah.
travel
They
back and
travel
forth
a
through
lot,
there.
yeah.
I mean, we're pretty interconnected. So,
Yep.
if you're coming through and you're not going to make it over there or something like
Yep.
that, early voting only though.
Yep.
And then, game day, man, election day is Tuesday, I think, right? Yeah, 22nd. So, 7 to 7.
Okay, cool. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you.
Yep, absolutely.